Gonzalez and Mr. Torres being absent. We'll wait just one more minute until Jim gets in. Just in time, budget.
It's warm off the press, right?
We will open the meeting with a moment of silence that you can observe as you so feel to do. Thank you. Would you stand and join me for the pledge, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any audience to patrons?
There are none.
Thank you. Ms. Ludwig, are you ready to proceed?
I think so.
This is just-in-time budgeting?
It is. I apologize. We got some adjustments to our certified values. We actually had certified values yesterday, and they changed them this morning. So we've been, values impact just about everything all the way through this budget. So we've been huffing and puffing to make sure everything ticks and ties and flows and all that. So anyway, no better rip. Okay, so this evening we're going to have an update from last workshop. We'll cover general fund, debt service fund, and child nutrition, and then also meet the truth in taxation requirements, which the requirements for tonight are for you all to vote on the date of the meeting to discuss budget and tax rate, and then also vote on the tax rate that will be published in our notice. We have a required pretty much one-page notice. The comptroller's office requires certain size font, certain items on the notice and all that. So that's our objective, is to get our tax rate that goes in that notice. Okay, we'll look at general fund revenues first. The total revenue budget is at $246.162 million. Local revenues at $147.768 million, which is 60% of the budget. State revenues are at $96.7 million roughly, or 39% of the revenues, and federal revenues are at $1.725 million, or 1%. This year's property values have grown by an estimated 9.43% over the 2015 certified values, which is compared to a little over 11% growth last year, 8% growth in the year prior to that, 4% in 2013, and 2% in 2012. We've made adjustments. Well, actually, the chief appraiser made adjustments as to the values in accordance with the chief appraiser's reasonable estimate of value for property that's still under review. We actually have 3 categories of values we're working with this year, as opposed to 2 that we normally have. We have certified, which are not under review, that are all settled. We have a set of values that are still under ARB review. And this year we have some values that are not on the roll and not under review. It has to do with some leased equipment. As of today, we have $442.238 million in freeze adjusted taxable value that's still under ARB review. That's 2,172 accounts. Our net taxable values are $13.175 billion. We're using $13.125 billion for budgeting. And that's based on certain categories. We're using 90% of the value just to be conservative, and as to what our chief appraiser is thinking is going to occur in adjustments for those reviews. We have also reduced tax revenue by $3.11 million, having to do with the flood reappraisals that we discussed in a previous meeting. So net current year taxes are $142.764 million. Delinquent tax collections are estimated at $1.6 million, and penalty and interest collections at $900,000, for total taxes of $145.264 million. This is your standard calculation, side by side to the 15-16 budget. And this is the summary of the 2016-17 revenues. So you'll see there at the bottom your total of $246.162 million, with the greatest categories being property taxes at $145.264 and state aid at $87.144. Since the last workshop, we've decreased actually the revenue budget by almost $1.6 million. The bulk of that being the reappraisal, the flood reappraisal reduction to tax revenue. But you'll see there when we had an increase due to the certified values of $784,661. And then we did the reductions for the flood reappraisals. And of course, that's still an estimate, but it's what we had shared with you before. So we reduced taxes by that $3,110,372, and state aid by $146,381. And if you'll remember, in the previous agenda item, we had indicated it would be about $150,000. We've increased the penalty and interest estimate by $100,000, and then we've also, due to those values and the submission of the route services report, and also adjusting some student counts, state aid has increased by those items that you see there. And then we've also increased our athletic revenue budget by $75,000. So that's a total of about $1.6 million. On the expenditure side, our budget totals $246,162,205, with payroll costs, of course, being the biggest one at $206.8 million. Since the last meeting, we've decreased that budget by roughly $1.6 million as well. The bulk of that reduction was in the positions that we've included in the budget for growth. If we, in fact, do need those positions later, mid-year or something like that, we might need to come back and amend. But we've taken out 17 positions. We've also increased slightly our allowance for attrition by $281,704. And then we've reduced the allowance for next year, 17-18 classroom startup, and/or 16-17 new year additions by $275,000. So of course, if those needs arise, we'll have to come back to you and amend for that later. And we're still looking at all the categories until we actually adopt a budget. Your big ticket items are the same as at the last meeting. However, we've adjusted the salary one to $169.31 million, and the new classroom startup down at the bottom to $410,000. I believe it was $685,000. And we have a balanced budget at this time of $246.162 million. And I'll take any questions on the general fund if you have.
Matt, the 17 positions, is that positions that just aren't being replaced, or?
Those are, we typically include growth positions.
Okay,
for,
so they're not
additional
something we've,
students.
okay.
No, it's not a vacant position that we're deleting or a current position that we're not refilling or whatever.
Okay.
You said there was an increase in athletics by 75,000?
Right.
Oh.
At this point in the year, we are looking at the current year, which is the 15-16 budget, to see how the actuals are panning out for the current year. And we're going to be between 500, 600,000 for this year. So we feel safe in estimating about the same for next year.
I don't understand.
Okay, we do a.
I'm sorry, I've had a long day.
No, that's okay. We do a current year projection as to
Mhm.
where we're going to end budget, and current year revenues for athletics are between 550,000, 600,000, in that range.
Oh,
So we
okay.
feel like next year will be similar, so we
Okay.
feel safe to
Okay.
add another 75,000 to the budget.
Okay.
I have a question. Jill, the reduction in allowances for classroom startup, is that taken from last year's figures? Or how did you come up with?
No, every year varies. You know, at this point in time, we don't know how many new classrooms will be starting up in the next year, or how many portable buildings we'll be adding. There's various reasons that we use classroom startup money, and we've actually had to amend that budget in the past because it varies so much from year to year. So we felt like this was a minimal reduction, and we would just come back to you later in the year if
So
we needed more
that,
money.
that doesn't have anything to do with the
No.
flood-related decrease?
Not that particular budget, that particular line item. All the reductions really have something to do with that flood reappraisal.
With the flood
Because
relief.
we're trying to balance.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to debt service. There's not a whole lot of change there other than for the certification of values and also the adjustments for the flood reappraisal. Our revenue sources total $52.934 million, mostly being property taxes at $48.593 million. We have INS fund tax revenue of $49.09 million, but then we've reduced that by $1,046,709 for our estimate of flood reappraisal, which you've seen before as well. And then we're estimating $550,000 in delinquent taxes as well, and penalties and interest. In addition to tax revenue and the debt service budget, we're budgeting $4.341 million in interest earnings on the debt service fund, interest earning on the capital projects, bond funds basically, and then capitalized and accrued interest from our bond transactions. And at that, we also feel like we'll have to use about $1,272,000 of the debt service fund balance as well. Of course, that'll change due to the fact that we have a remarketing of our variable rate bonds that's occurring this week. And then we'll also be selling bonds at probably late winter to sell the remaining authorization of the 2014 referendum. So the numbers will change, and we'll probably have additional capitalized interest. We feel like we probably will use less than $1,272,000 in the debt service fund balance when all is said and done. With that being said, our expenditure budget and debt service is $54.206 million, with $54.121 million of that being principal and interest. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got those two transactions coming up as well. Our INS rate this year is a combined rate of $1.39, $1.04 being M&O and 35 cents being INS. And this will be the 6th year of that rate. I'll skip through a couple slides, but there wasn't any other additional information in between. We are proposing the same rate for 16-17, so no increase in debt service. We have done the preliminary truth in taxation calculations, which we have to publish. Our effective rate is 1.34505, and the rollback rate is 1.410288. Those are what we feel like will be published in that notice, which will be in the paper this weekend. And of course, there's a lot of other data, like estimated fund balances and cost per student and things like that that go into that notice as well. One last thing, the Child Nutrition Fund has not changed since your last meeting, so it's still a balanced budget of $13.5 million, with, of course, payroll and supplies being the two large categories. So we've gotten to the point now where we discuss the required items, which would be the meeting date. Right now, we're proposing the regular meeting of August 18th to be the meeting that we would discuss budget and tax rate. And also, you would need to vote on the two-part tax rate that will be published in the notice this weekend, which is, again, the $1.39005 that it currently is. That's all I have.
Would you go over the M&O one more time so that
Yes,
everyone could get that, and the INS as well?
Yes. The M&O portion of the tax rate is 1.04005. And then the INS is 0.35, for a total of 1.39005.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we'll go ahead and move to the action items. The first one we have is the approving the August 18th as the date for the public meeting to discuss the budget and proposed tax rates. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the August 18th, 2016 as our date for public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate.
Do you have a second?
My second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second action item is approval of the tax rate. Requesting the Board of Trustees approve a tax rate to be published in the newspaper and the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. You just got those numbers, the M&O of 1.04005, the INS of 0.35, for a total of 139,005. Do I have a motion to approve this, please?
Make a motion that we approve the proposed tax rate of 1.39.
Second?
I'll say.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those are the only two action items we have. We do have a couple of things to discuss in closed session. So pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082 of the Open Meetings Act, we'll move to closed session at 5:19.
Tiffany Foster as the principal of Pink Elementary School.
Second.
I'll say.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Any more motions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees approve personnel as presented with the addendum.
Do you have a second to that?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. No further business before this board. We will, oh, yes,
Can I ask
ma'am.
something? Is it too late to ask about putting something on the next month's agenda? On August agenda? Is it too late to say something? Okay. All right. That's okay. something we forgot to do last time.
With that, we will adjourn at 5:25. Thank you.